Hey, it's Michael. So who is the future recording thief? Back in the late 90s, I think it was the 90s, I was living in Auckland, New Zealand, and I was starting to go through some old demos that I had recorded with a previous band, or I'd recorded for a previous band. This led me, I probably, using those demos, I probably made about 20 or so tracks in a few months, and recorded them and didn't do anything with them. I then moved to Australia and started playing with a pop rock group called Charlotte, which is based in Brisbane. And all the tracks that I'd done in Auckland got sort of relegated to the box of tapes that lived in storage. A few years back, a few years after that, Ben, my brother, and I and another guy jammed on these some of these songs, and some of them kind of clicked. So we started recording them, and then even a few more years after that, I started recording this album, and then that took another year or so as we had some personal challenges during that time, obviously, with the pandemic and a few other things happening. Nearly all of these are old songs, which is why it's called Past Lives, but they still have a lot of meaning, and I'm going to talk you through some of that. So Eve was probably the oldest song out of this group, and if you listen to the demo, which is available through Dark Escapes Music, you'll hear that demo, and the original recording I did it with an acoustic guitar and singing into a computer microphone. It was one of those long stick things that came up to your mouth from the desk, and you kind of talked into a computer. It didn't sound that great. Loads of compression on it because it was just a terrible microphone that was built more for Skype calls than anything else. You'll find a lot of these songs that I'd written around that time were dealing with personal experiences, and this one is to do with remaining in contact and around someone who you know is really bad for you. It's about the state of mind you're in when you were going back to that shitty situation, and the games you play in your head that you use to justify what you're doing and why you're doing that. I have to admit that some of my early demos sound really bleak and sparse, and it's nice to be able to get that polish on them to make them sound closer to what was actually in my head at the time, or just reuse them and remake those in a different way, which is what I've done for some of those songs. Of all of the songs on this album, Eve is the one that I've tried to record before, probably 5 or 6 times, to be honest, and I've never got the outcome that I wanted, predominantly because it's got a very challenging intro and middle 8 section, so it's in an odd time signature, and maybe every drummer that I'd worked with had a different way of interpreting that, and Daniel Gallardo, who's the drummer on this track, came back and everything just clicked and it really worked well. So it's exactly what I had in my head, and then obviously adding everything else in there afterwards was just a blessing. So, you take my sanity away. I wrote this one in a small town in Wellington on a 4-track Tascam recorder. I don't have one here at the moment because no one uses those anymore, I think. It wrote before I moved to Auckland, and you can also hear the demo of this on the Dark Escapes Music release, and you'll see how different it is from the final version. The demo that I did in Auckland a few years later was a lot closer to this, and it came about because I just bought a new guitar, a Les Paul, and it was a Gothic edition, a black Gothic edition, because back in those days I wanted to be cool. I still have a black Les Paul over here somewhere that I use quite frequently, but not that same one. And that clean pattern that I was playing originally just morphed into that picked out riff. The song itself is about fear and how that leads to rage. Not to get all Yoda on you, but it was the fear of losing yourself and your own personality, so that you'd fit in with other people, and you're forced to become someone who you're not, and how that makes you very angry, and how that anger doesn't sometimes get out. what lifted this song higher is Joyland's amazing bridge, which to me just really makes this song a whole different beast, and it brought it back to life, I think, because otherwise I would have probably left it. Can never be over. Something to hide my All You Wanted. So this is the first song that I sent to Joyland to do her violin parts, and I wasn't expecting that to happen. It was an experiment. I never thought that I would probably need a violin on my tracks, and I was intending all of my tracks just to be bass, guitar, drums, and that was how it was going to be. Anyway, I sent them off to her just as an experiment, and I expected that it'd come back with a single guitar line or so. What came back was just incredible, and I was definitely impressed. So I decided to push on and get her to help with recording the rest of the songs, and that's how it came into this. I really enjoy the way the song builds, and this is so much better than what I originally envisaged, so I'm really happy with it. Lyrically, the song is being let down by someone you trust and respect, and probably because of the lack of respect that they have for themselves. When you realise that it's too late, and maybe there's a lot of disappointment in that. Give me a reason. So I've actually played this song a few times, so it's a lot more familiar than the others as I led up to the recording of it. Thankfully, there are a few bits that we changed because of the live process, and that always helps a lot. But in saying that, there's bits of the original demo that I did in Auckland that are still on this actual recording. The synth parts, I think, some of them are the original ones, and I think I didn't do this on the Tascam, I did this on an old version of a DAW that I had. So I was able to retrieve all of the files from that session and use them or rebuild them. The other thing about this song is that Rodney played on this album, this song. So for those who don't know, Rod's a bass player from the Philippines. He's played in so many bands I can't even list them. But he's someone who I really admire, and he's played in a couple of tracks on this song, which I'm really happy about. Deeper Side lyrically is about bullying, and in terms of personal experience, this for me dates back to high school and onwards, a little bit past that. So for me, there was a lot of unresolved confusion during that time in my life, and this song was a way to help that. Oh wow, so I wasn't really intending to have a cover on the album, but this song is something that I really love playing, and I've played it in a few bands now. I didn't know how it would translate to being recorded. Obviously, My Sex is a very different band, new wave and synth-based, and it's very different to Eve, so I did really enjoy recording this song, and I actually asked Kyle from Inspomia to play this on drums. He's more of a pop drummer, but it's really good to see how he knocked this out of the park. And also Joyland's violin symphony, again, really lifted this sonically. I'm really happy that I got to include this on the album, and when it came up to the idea of making an album, it was like, well, I think I might have to put this song on here as well, because it's part of my thing, and that I I knew I needed to bring in a lot of real musicians to play real instruments. This, in my other project, Inspomia, is more electronic and more synth-based. I'm playing a lot of synths, and I'm playing a lot of, the guitar in there is very minor, but in Eve it's a lot more rock, and it's a lot more guitar, and it's a lot more organic. So I needed to bring in a lot of different people to my normal crew. So while Kyle did work on a couple of songs, including People. Daniel Gallardo from the USA performed drums on most of these sessions, and I was seriously blown away. I first sent him Eve, and as I mentioned, that time signature is really, people interpret that different ways. It's not too difficult, but he just came back with the perfect performance, and it really inspired me. And I've heard him on his Instagram channel, and he's just really passionate about what he does. He's a really great personality, and he's very serious about his craft. Look, as we were recording this album, obviously a lot of us were in lockdown during that time. I had a few family emergencies that I needed to deal with. We had limited access to studios, we had limited access to equipment. During this time also, live performances were all shut down, so getting into a situation where we were able to record any of this live was going to be impossible. And just for the fact that we're all on different sides of the world, on different continents, it was a really different recording process to what you'd normally have with a band. Overall, though, I'm really happy with the result, and it's going to be. I'm looking forward to sharing it with you, and hopefully you enjoy it as well.